Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I'd like to talk with you today about what to say in 8 ticklish situations. These are model statements plus the thinking behind them. Yesterday I shared with you some communication tips, and here I'm going to incorporate them in sample responses to common ticklish situations. Of course, what you'd actually say would depend on your interaction style, on the circumstances, and on the person or persons you're speaking with. Well, each one of these model responses is, I'm going to follow it with the thinking that went behind it. First is the situation we're often faced with, which is declining an invitation. You might say, "Thank you very much for the invitation. Alas, I have to," and then you're going to insert something specific, and again then simply say, "Again, thank you." That response is honest. While you don't want to go to the event, you do appreciate having been invited. And providing a specific reason for not attending is face-saving for the person. And reiterating your appreciating having been invited at the end of your little quick talk conveys sincerity. And all of that was accomplished in a very brief response. In ticklish situations, there's a natural tendency to talk a lot and attempt to dig yourself out. Being concise is usually wiser. Another ticklish situation is when you feel the need to disagree. Well, here's an example of an actual situation my client faced. I've just changed the name. And here's what my client and I crafted as to what a response should be. "I can understand why you'd think Mary would be a better board member. After all," and then insert a reason or two why she might be. "On the other hand, I like to think I bring more important benefits to the board," and then you'll mention those 2 or 3. And then end by saying, "But what do you think?" This answer leads by preempting the objection, that is, citing the reasons that Mary would be a better board member. That makes the listener feel understood and also precludes that person stating those reasons for supporting Mary. By stating those reasons, it strengthens that person's commitment to Mary. Prefacing my client's pitch for himself with a softener like, "I like to think I bring advantages," or whatever, that avoids criticizing the listener's position. And ending with, "What do you think?" allows the listener that much valued agency without my client surrendering. Excuse me. Now let's turn to a situation when you want to criticize. Here's what you might say. Example. Okay. "Of course, I'd rather praise you, but alas, I've grown increasingly concerned with the quality of your reports. As you know, I've turned many of them back to you, noting the specific problems, but more broadly, the work lacks the solid, nuanced reasoning that's required. I'd like you to decide whether you want to redouble your efforts to improve, have your job description changed, or even leave." Okay, so leading with "I'd rather praise you" conveys a human quality, a predisposition toward being positive, and even a fondness for the person. In providing that feedback, the person avoids the mistake of confining the critique to the highly specific. Often, the core issue is less concrete but more central. The response concludes by giving choices, which makes the problem solving more collaborative and allows the employee some agency. Of course, if the problem continues, unilateral action may be required. Another ticklish situation is apologizing. Here's the sample response. "I screwed up, I'm sorry, and I've learned from it," and then you briefly insert what you've learned. "I hope you can forgive me." That's a brief answer. It's not defensive. It gives reason for optimism it won't occur again, and gives agency. "I hope you can forgive me." Another ticklish situation, responding to a passionate believer with whom you disagree, strongly disagree. I recommend often just saying, "I understand," and then changing the topic. Of course, you could instead choose to engage with that person, but in light of the passion and disagreement, it's more likely to create enmity than a meeting of the minds. Another ticklish situation, asking for a raise or promotion. Usually the negotiation is best started with an email that lays out your case and allows the boss to consider it in advance. Having considered your case, he or she is less likely to start with no. It's harder to make a person move from no than if first having heard your case. Well, here's a sample such email. "I know it's 6 months before my next scheduled salary review, but I want to make the case that I deserve an interim raise. I've done X, Y, and Z, and these should be things that benefited the organization and especially the boss, and project that move and I project that moving forward, that trend will accelerate." Especially considering the comparable salary list that I attached to this email, I believe a raise of 10 to 20% is fair, maybe in cash or perhaps in non-taxable benefits. What do you think? Or should we set up a time to talk? Okay, so that pitch preempts the objection of the request not being timely. It crisply outlines the benefits, especially those to the boss. It focuses on the future. Employers are more likely to give raises if they believe future performance will exceed even the past good performance. The pitch mentions non-cash as a possibility. That expansion of options could not only save the person tax dollars, but suggests more ways that the boss could reward the employee. Note that I used the word fair. I said it would seem fair to give a 10 to 20% raise. Well, that sets the tone for a negotiation based on justice rather than simply giving the least that they can get away with. Also note the contrarian approach. It specified the amount of raise desired. Now, conventional wisdom is to let the offer come from the boss because that avoids asking for too much or too little. But my clients have generally done better by making a specific request that's on the high side of fair. That avoids the employer making a low offer, from which it's often difficult to get the employer to significantly improve the offer. As in the previous example, the employee is also giving the boss agency. What do you think? That's a great way to give the boss agency. Or should we set up a time to talk? Next ticklish situation is fear of losing your job. And this is something you might say to your boss. I believe I'm not performing as you'd like. Before the problem becomes irreversible, I want to stress that I like working here and I'm committed to improving. Would you be willing to share what you think I should most focus on? Whether or not the boss makes suggestions, come prepared to offer 1, 2, maybe 3 substantive areas you'd want to work on that you believe would please your boss. Note in this pitch there's no defensiveness, but rather it shows an openness to improvement and pleasure in working for that organization. And it gives full agency to the boss to make the suggestions. Next tough situation, you're quitting your job because you're unhappy with your job and the employer. Here's a sample statement. This is difficult for me to say because there's much I like about working here, and then list 2 or 3 legitimate things. But I've concluded that it's wise for me and perhaps for you for me to leave. The core reasons are, to be honest, that I've grown less enthusiastic about what we're selling, and you and I haven't gotten as long as well as I had hoped. I want to let you know as soon as I've made the decision so we can agree on when I should leave, and in case you'd like me to help in the transition, maybe documenting what I've learned that you might want to pass on to the next employers or to existing employees, next employee or existing employees, being on the hiring committee, or even training my replacement. What do you think? Now, that statement starts with the positive, which increases the chances of an amicable separation, and with a good reference. Stating the negatives in an honest but face-saving way provides feedback that might be helpful to the organization or to the boss. And proposing alternatives for the transition process demonstrates your integrity. And ending with, what do you think, again, helps ensure a collaborative rather than adversarial process. And the final of the 8 ticklish situations I want to talk about is a tough question asked in a job interview. A common difficult interview question is, why have you been unemployed so long? Here is a sample answer. It's a combination of reasons. I wanted to take some time to raise my child. I want to pick a well-suited job, not just any job. And yes, the COVID-lamed economy has made job searching difficult. But I'm eager to get back to work, and I'm excited about this job because I'm a good fit, and you give 2 or 3 examples. That answer is transparently honest, which helps break down the interviewee-interviewer barrier, which has been described as 2 people lying to each other. And it ends on a positive note, with credible reasons why that person should be hired. Of course, there are no one-size-fits-all answers, but I'm hoping that these examples and the thinking behind them will be helpful to you. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I'm Marty Nemko. I welcome your thumbs up and accept your thumbs down. I always look forward to your comments and especially like you to hit the share button below. Share on your social media so that my efforts can have broader impact. And I am flattered if you choose to subscribe to my channel. In any event, I do thank you for watching. I am Marty Nemko.